Hello and welcome back to another episode of Legal Unicorns. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Esmarie Swanepoel, who joins us from probably sunnier Mauritius than where we've got it in Cape Town, although you did just say off camera that it is starting to warm up. We're looking forward to that here in Cape Town as well. As those of you who are regular listeners know, that we like to interview those who are in the legal profession that have taken a slightly different journey or are doing slightly different things with their lives and their careers to inspire the next generation. And I'm delighted that Esmarie has been very patient with me when I had to cancel recently, as these things happen. But thanks again, and just welcome to the show to start with, Esmarie.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate that.
No, it's great. It's going to be good to get into your journey and some of the notes that you've written that I got sent this morning. So, but just as a very brief background, you are currently in Mauritius and you are head of corporate with Temple Corporate Services, which is, I believe, a law firm and management company and training company. Very, very, nice. I was looking at the website this morning. I was thinking, they've got some really good professionals and doing some exciting work there. But what I'd like to do, if I may, if you could start us off on your journey from where you were originally from, and how you've got to be in Mauritius of all places.
Yes, thanks, Rob. I'll try and give you the succinct version. Obviously, we go through many things and the journey can be long and windy. But I'm from Johannesburg. I'm born and bred Johannesburg, South Africa. I spent all of my life, my younger years there. Most of my experience is from South Africa as well. So I went to school in Johannesburg, in Braamfontein, a school called Help Mekaar, which is unfortunate for the name, but it was a great school nonetheless. And I pursued a legal career. I think what really got me interested in law, I've always been not an argumentative person, but I have been very, I have my opinions, and I do find it healthy. So to the distress of my parents, sometimes it's something that I think I became aware of at a young age. So I've always been naturally drawn to kind of, what's wrong, what's right, and there's no grey. So initially, I enrolled at the University of Johannesburg after completing my high school career for an LLB. I quickly realized that, while academia is great and it's a foundation that's obviously very important, I was quite hungry to understand the practicalities around the legal profession and to understand, okay, fine, I'm learning all of these academic things and it's great, but what is it going to do? What am I going to do with all of this? So there was no legal professionals in my family. I didn't have much exposure to that side at the time. So I decided to take a part-time, not an internship, but a part-time job in a law firm, which at the time specialized in conveyancing, property law mostly. Okay. So it was very interesting to me. I really, really enjoyed the practical side of things. Conveyancing as well is obviously a problem-solving scenario most of the time. And, I was attracted to kind of really understanding how it works in a law firm, how the business functions, where the clients come from. To really understand that structure was very interesting to me. So I quickly shifted into a full-time practical experience, and I then shifted my studies to a part-time basis. And honestly, it's one of the best decisions I've made, in my opinion, because there's a lot of soft skills that today I can thank to that experience. It wasn't easy, but it's something that today I credit for a lot of the, on-the-job skills that I think sometimes we are not taught in tertiary, educational facility.
That's good. Can I just interject there? Just a bit, so I'm clear. So you moved your LLB studies to part-time?
Yeah, so I started working full-time. They offered me an opportunity, which I took. It wasn't really an easy decision, but at the time it really was speaking to me. So I kind of, shifted it around.
That's a really, obviously it's quite a brave thing to do, I guess, in the sense that, when you're still quite young and, your parents and probably friends and family had opinions on what you should and shouldn't be doing. But it's interesting because anybody listening to this who might be thinking, what is there an alternative path for me? I think this is, you might be the first guest that I've heard of that's done that, and I like it because it means that what it shows me is that you were picking up some very interesting practical experience, and you could see how you were really driven by the commerciality of the workplace, but also carrying on with your studies as well. That's really good. That's really, sorry, I mean, I interjected, but I think it's an important point for anyone listening to know that they can actually do that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not easy to take that route, but I do think that, in the experience and the practical education that you get in terms of, what your day-to-day life will look like as a legal professional. Many people don't consider that at the outset. We have an idea, but until you actually sit in the firm and you understand the dynamics, then it's a different approach, and you learn a lot. You understand it much better.
Well, you say that, and actually just last week I interviewed a law firm strategist called Jordan Furlong, and that's available on the channel for anyone that's listening to this. And I was very nice about law schools and just said, law schools are obviously, they're brilliant and whatever. And he tore into it and said, no, I'm going to go further than that. They're rubbish. They're not setting up people for the workplace at all. It's interesting that you were getting the best of both worlds. Yeah,
I think in doing that also it kind of set the way for the rest of my career, because I've always just organically, with further studies and at one stage I pursued a diploma in psychology, because I understood that in the legal profession you have to be able to relate to people. At the end of the day, you're still performing a sales function, regardless of what role you fulfill. So, the importance of sales, learning that skill and understanding how people think. And that I also picked up just from being in a law firm and seeing other people's mistakes. So, it kind of instilled in me organically the mindset that you have to have that duality throughout your career. And it's played out like that throughout my career. Even to this day, it's not like I've followed an academic path and stopped. It's always been a combination of the academic knowledge side and understanding the practical side. And I think it just brings you so much more insight. And at the end of the day, it makes you more relatable to your clients, to potential clients. There's a different skill set that you get, which if you just follow the normal academic route, I think it's not always accessible to you until much later in life.
It's so true. Again, it's so nice to hear a legal professional speak like that, because it's one of the things that, again, Jordan and I and other guests who've been on the show have talked about quite a bit in terms of, the skills, they unfairly call them sometimes softer skills, but it's actually the ability to have empathy and the ability to communicate with your client, whether it's someone, and I'm not just talking about family lawyers who have to obviously have that to go through a divorce or custody cases. I'm talking about the corporate side of things. People who are involved in selling their business or acquiring new businesses. There's always people involved, and if the lawyers can have that empathy and that understanding and that ability to communicate and to sell a solution, then they usually come out on top. So it's really interesting that you were combining that kind of stuff while studying as well. And obviously, I'm not going to. Typically, what we would do is I'd go through the LinkedIn profile, and I'd be able to sort of see when you finished studying and then you moved here and that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to ask you I would never do it to a lady to ask her, her age and what years. But just so we've got some context, you were working. Once you finish your studies, you carry on working in Johannesburg, or did you move after that? Did you move? Because at some point you moved to the UK, didn't you?
Yeah, so I finished high school in 2001, so I'm giving away my age now. And then
you're younger than me, that's all right.
Johannesburg until 2025, 2026, when, I had my experience there, which was mostly in property law and business development as well. I think I just naturally, I'm drawn to that kind of side of the business, just organically. So I always find myself in some role that relates to strategy or development alongside whatever the operational requirements are. So I really wanted to broaden my horizons and see, what else is there. South Africa is great. I'm South African, but I really wanted to get out there and explore, other business models and how other countries were doing it, what I could learn from other people. So I left South Africa and went to the UK, where I was for 2 years. I joined a very small firm there. It was a one-man show, essentially, a solicitor who was based in Notting Hill. And
Ah,
she ran a very successful practice for a number of successful artists, chefs. She had a small property portfolio as well, so she was dealing with the property acquisitions, and she also acted as power of attorney for many of her high-profile clients. So it was just the two of us in the office. So for that, it was daunting, but again, it's one of the best decisions I made because when you burn your bridges, that's when you learn how to sail. You have no choice but to just get on with it. So, that kind of experience that you don't really set out to get, but just by spotting an opportunity and saying, it's not going to be easy, but what I learned in those 2 years, I would never have, it's priceless. So, I spent
yeah.
2 years in London, came back to South Africa. During that time, it was around 2008. So, it was becoming, what happened with all of the crash of the market in the US. So it was a very tumultuous time in South Africa for legal professionals, specifically in the property kind of conveyancing space.
I can
And I then
imagine. Yeah.
decided to make, to take a concrete decision and say, okay, I've got all this experience. What do I actually want to do with it? Like, where do I want to go? And organically, I've always been drawn to the commercial side of things, the people side of things. And, also I'm quite ambitious. So in order to kind of spread things a little bit further and see, well, what can I do outside of what I've known to date? So I joined a commercial and IP practice in Johannesburg with a firm just after the 2008 nightmare that I think many legal professionals will know exactly what I'm referring to. And from there I kind of just focused on commercial law and IP. And again, somehow business development and kind of strategy always finds its way to me, and I embrace it, and I did. So I spent a few more years in a law firm there. I joined some of the bigger, top 4, top 5 firms for a few years, and then I got an opportunity to join Virgin in South Africa. So
Yeah.
at the time, Virgin Mobile was just set up, and they were kind of on the rise, and I got the opportunity to join them, which I define today as a turning point for me because I got a really good exposure to the entrepreneurial environment, not just the way that Branson, set up his own businesses, and even the legal functionality within those entities, how they work in a creative way. I was really drawn to that because it wasn't conventional. It was effective, but none of it is the conventional kind of copy-paste, legal framework. Everything is done with an entrepreneurial and creative flair. And of course, at the time, he was just setting up the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship in Johannesburg, in Braamfontein as well. So I immediately, kind of jumped on that and got involved in the screening and assessing of the applicants, which for me was a real turning point because I understood that, that is kind of where my passion was. In helping people navigate difficult landscapes to make whatever projects or dreams they had a reality, and also to solve problems because that's been such a fundamental part of a lot of the things that I've done is problem solving at the end of the day. I think that sparked really something in me, and I think it has a lot to do with how I ended up where I am today, which is what we do every day. We help people build their businesses, incorporate their businesses, and assist entrepreneurs with new market entries and troubleshooting, the navigating their setup, and just being an entrepreneur. So I think it's all culminated in a way. But there's a few distinct decisions I think I took that has really had a big impact on where I am today and what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, clearly. I mean, you might be the only South African that moved to London and didn't move to Putney to start with, and anybody, and thankfully for me, my wife did because that's where I met her, and now 20 years later, she's managed to get me back here. But and for any South African listening to this, well, they'll know exactly what we're talking about. But also, it's interesting. one of the things I've touched on before, I do a weekly podcast and career guidance video that we put out. And one of the things I touched on before a few weeks ago was what you did, which is joining a smaller law firm and getting exposure to every aspect of the business. And that's something that I know eventually bigger law firms and bigger corporates actually really look for. So it's interesting when you were talking about your experience in London and subsequent experience as well, and experience around that. When you're in a small office and a small team and you have to do absolutely everything, you actually pick up so much information without even knowing it, and that's obviously, like you say, that it sort of sparks that entrepreneurial brain part of your brain, and that passion to help people, and that, like you say, it starts to lead you into that the virgin space, and then subsequently from there as well. Just before we get into some of the bits and pieces about some of the decisions that you've made in your career, I just want to talk about your upbringing a little bit, just to give people a little bit more context. And obviously, I don't know you, but I have read some of the notes that you've written as well. And it'd just be interesting to get some of your thoughts in terms of your parents and your family life, and how that's really shaped your journey to date as well.
Yeah, I think it has, obviously, for most people, a profound impact on who you become as a person. But I was very fortunate to have to grow up with two very hardworking parents. My father is a doctor. He's still practicing today. He's 73 and he's probably healthier than I am. So he's always been like that. He's worked 14, 16 hours a day, 6 days a week since as long as I can remember. He was also involved in the military when I was in primary school. So always the work ethic was always very present in our
discipline.
house. Yes. My mom was a nurse, so she, obviously cliche, that's how they met in hospital. It's quite a sweet story, but that is how they met. And she was a nurse, an ICU nurse. She later moved to operating theatre. So again, it was a very laborious job. She worked very long hours. I mean, there were many days when she would be gone before we were even up, and came home late. So, but she loved her job. I mean, she lived for it. And as does my father, he's still working today. So, that was instilled in us from a very, very young age. So I think work is something that, I've never been shy about. My brother is the same. I have an older brother. And, we had a very good example that, hard work is what you need to do. You need to find opportunities that align with you and, do it ethically and hard work. There's no substitute for that. Everything else comes second. We were raised that way. And I think, that really did form a lot of the way that I look at things and the standards that I have, or I try to have for myself and people around. It was very formative.
Oh, I love it. I just went like that because, there's something that I often say as well is that there is no replacement for hard work. There never has been, and there never will be. We may live in a technical age, but that's not there. Technology isn't necessarily there to make our lives easier, so we can just lie down and do nothing. It just means it gives us a technical edge, or it can speed things up. But you cannot replace the hard work. And it sounds like you had a similar upbringing to myself. I certainly learned the value of hard work from my parents as well, and that's instilled in me today. And it's nice when you said I was lucky enough to have hard-working parents. I think that's, I'll have to remind my daughter of that at some point.
I do all the time.
When she's older, maybe, okay, well, that's really good, because it gives us an insight into you as well, into your family life, and into really what set you on that path to working hard, but your attitude and your hard working sort of stance and who you are has also been shaped, and it's you also strike me as someone who isn't afraid to take a chance. Certainly when you were younger, moving to the UK and obviously you've moved around a bit, and now you're in Mauritius as well, and that's I think you put it on one of your notes about, not being afraid. I read somewhere, I haven't got it in front of me now, but it's that kind of, that always learning, always pushing. It seems to shape who you are.
Yeah, it does. I really thrive on that. Sometimes because problem solving is something that comes quite natural to me, not by choice, just, I don't know, it's like that. But I think that, opportunities for me is something that I think, next to having sales skills, which is imperative in my opinion, to find the opportunities and leverage them when they present themselves. I mean, you can't put a price to that. So, okay, fine. Some people are risk averse, understood, especially in the legal profession where you are taught to kind of, balance everything and make sure that, you check all the boxes. It is not a conventional approach, but it does pay off. I mean, you have to be willing to take some risks to get where you want to be. It doesn't matter which career or which sector you're in. It's just life is like that sometimes. So I guess, again, I'm lucky that I'm a little bit more risk averse in that sense with my own decisions. Not recklessly so, but, I think if an opportunity presents itself and it's aligned with me and, what feels good, then it's something that I will act quickly on. And that has served me very well. I mean, I will tell you the decisions that I've made, as I've mentioned, have all been risky ones, in my opinion, and they've all served me to this day. So I don't regret it.
It's shaped who you are, and
Yes.
you and I are kindred spirits almost, in that sense. I've also put myself, made decisions of career and life that have served me well to this day, and I've trusted my gut on many an occasion, and it's working quite well. Now, in terms of you, I mean, I've got your profile in front of me. You obviously, you mentioned Virgin, and then you moved to Norton Rose Fulbright for a few years, which obviously is a big international firm of very prestigious and of note there. And then 2016 comes around, and you move to Mauritius. What sort of brought you to that beautiful island?
Yes, so it's a very interesting story. Again, it was a risky move, but I had a tragedy in my life where my daughter's father passed away in a car accident unexpectedly. And she was at the time 5 years old, so she was very young. It was a trauma to everyone, of course. And during that period, my brother, which I mentioned, my older brother, actually, he relocated to Mauritius. His wife got an opportunity and they came here. So, just to kind of get a bit away, have a bit of a break, we decided to come to Mauritius and just see what it's like and, visit family. So it was a holiday, essentially. We spent a few days here and really liked it. My daughter was thriving. It is a very child-friendly, happy place, so obviously it's a no-brainer. And I thought, let me just put my feelers out and see what is the profession like, what opportunities are around. I've never been here. Let's just see. And I managed to meet Temple in that time. I came for a meeting with our founder, group head. We had a conversation and, we discussed a few things. We met over the course of the following week, and she offered me the opportunity to come to Mauritius and, have a fresh start and just, have a change of scenery, take on that challenge in a new jurisdiction, join that law firm at the time. It was obviously always part of Temple Group. Today it's known as Temple Law. And I did. I went back to South Africa. I sold everything. I packed up everything. We had 4 suitcases. And a month later, we were in Mauritius and I started working, I think, 2 days after that. So, it was a risk. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into fully. But again, hard work, stress. I was a single mom with a young girl, so the stress is on both sides.
Unexpectedly so as well.
Exactly. So, it was a really stressful time, but I think the change in the environment and the kind of focus of this new start, it really helped. It was a bit of a healing process because it culminated with a lot of goodbyes and letting go of things, which, if there's an unexpected tragedy, that is part and parcel of the experience. So, it was tragic, But it brought about this beautiful life we have now and this experience that we have today. So, I mean, we've been here ever since. I was in
Wow.
the
I
law
mean,
firm for 4 years. And then I made a move to the corporate side. Again, I felt a bit itchy and I wanted to explore new things. So then I joined Tempo Corporate Services, which is the licensed management company, licensed by the FSC. And that's where I've been since. So yeah, that's how I came
and
to
that
be here
was
today. I'm still
and that was
here.
8 years ago. I get,
Yes,
yeah,
almost 9 years
yeah.
ago now. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
I mean, thank you for sharing. I mean, obviously that's incredibly tragic and yeah, just like, well, I mean, I don't really have the vocabulary to describe what you must have gone through, but obviously a life-changing moment. And, but in those moments, I guess you also have to trust your judgment and trust that, when obviously as a mother of a 5-year-old, you've got, your daughter's coming first and you're thinking about her future and you're thinking about your own grief and future and career, and a lot, you would have spent a lot of time having to live right at the front of your nerves at that point, like making decisions
Yes.
that
It's a good way
you're
to
thinking,
explain it, actually.
yeah, just like I'm just doing things on the fly, going, I'm going to
Exactly.
do it, and
Exactly.
but it's testimony to you as a person of how it's worked out, and you, I mean, obviously now you can take a step back and go, well, all of the stuff that you did before really gave you the strength to do this, I guess, in many ways
Absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
It's
amazing.
Like, there's a reason we have our gut and our intuition. I think it sounds a bit woo-woo, but honestly,
No, not
you
at
can
all.
never go wrong because it's leading you somewhere. You're having those kind of nervousness or feelings or passion or excitement about things. It's for a reason, I'm sorry if it sounds like a woo-woo approach, but
No,
it really doesn't.
not at all. No, trust your gut. I mean, it really is one of the biggest things that we've got. Like you say, you've got your intuition and all of those experiences that you had in your early life and your upbringing in London and Johannesburg and everywhere really sort of set you up for those moments where you are living on your nerves, and that's incredible. And again, it just shows your character and your personality, and your hard work and your determination has got you to where you are at the moment. And yeah, your daughter would have moved there as a child, and now she's basically practically a working woman. Obviously, I guess that's nearly 10 years later.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got one of those myself, and she keeps me in check.
Being going on 30.
Yeah, brilliant, and full of opinions, some of which are very accurate. Sometimes, she's right. But yeah, look, I mean, like I say, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's important. I think it goes to show other professionals who are listening to this that we are faced with incredible challenges sometimes, and things affect us in different ways, and in those moments, you trusting your gut really has done you the world of good, really, which is great. So look, you obviously, your parents still, working. Well, Dad, at least. I don't know if your mum's still. She's probably had enough of ICU. Probably, but at this point, she's probably, maybe, hopefully for her sake, semi-retired. And they're still working. And your brother, is he still in Mauritius as well?
No, he's not in Mauritius anymore. I think they did their cycle here.
Okay.
But I'm still here. I've since met my husband here, who's a Mauritian, French Mauritian. So I mean, it's home.
Congratulations.
Really. It's home now.
Yes, of course. Yeah, but that's nice. That's nice, and for the long-term future as well. Now, in terms of you, and obviously, I'm going to have to, obviously, at some point, let you go back to work at some point. But it is enjoyable hearing about your journey, and I know Mauritius as well. Mauritius is a market that is picking up, and it's growing, and from a corporate perspective, it's. There's a lot more focus from our law firm clients on there as well, and we've had at least 2 or 3 that have moved and opened offices there, and that kind of thing. Are you, apart from, it's quite an open question, but there's the obvious changes coming with the world of tech and AI and things like that. But from a sort of a law and a corporate services perspective, and from a Mauritius perspective, what are you seeing in the sort of not too distant future in terms of changes and the market moves and things like that?
Yeah, I think, Mauritius is still quite a conservative country in terms of embracing technology and changes and fintech and all of these things is something that's very topical here. It's something that we really push for because it's exciting. Like you say, it should be seen as a tool. Technology is a tool, it's not a threat. So if you use it correctly, it makes you tenfold more productive. So it's really about just, educating people in the legal profession, ourselves, and even to a certain extent our clients, when you embrace technology in your operations, clients to understand that, especially the older generation, if they have their family businesses and they're kind of exploring new jurisdictions, it can be a bit daunting when the personal element is not constantly present. You might be dealing with exchanges in technological ways instead of picking up the phone and having a conversation. So I am very much, an advocate for technology. I use it in my life. We use it in our firm. Mauritius is really starting to embrace that. I think we've just improved our ranking globally in terms of our fintech regulations. So there's a lot of opportunity here in terms of, embracing what there is. We're not the US, we're not Europe, but we are, we're up there in terms of Africa. I think we are leading in that front. So it's exciting to kind of see the opportunities, like you've mentioned, the businesses popping up, the ideas locally, as well as from investors. It's really exciting to see that people, are embracing Mauritius as a jurisdiction with vast opportunity, close proximity to South Africa, of course. Yeah. And, if you're looking to have the tax benefits and all of that, it's a great place. But it is becoming a player in the field of embracing technology, fintech, all of these terms that we hear about. We don't all understand, but it's up there. I think it's definitely a place with many opportunities.
That's good to hear. It really is, because I think there's been a rapidly change in the corporate services sector and also in law as well. There's been a rapid change over the last, I would say, 18 to 24 months, where you're talking about, and it's not unfair of me to say, but you're talking about industries that were very slow to move, very slow to do things any differently than they've always been done, and now we're seeing a real appetite for embracing technology alongside traditional ways of doing business and skills, like you mentioned a couple of times there, business development skills, sales skills, communication skills, all becoming very important, because ultimately, you as lawyers and corporate service providers are there to find solutions. And it's not just a matter of, right, let's put the clock stopwatch on and let's charge them by the hour. It's actually, let's get to the solution, and how quickly can we do it? As I said to my...
Well, one thing we notice...
go on.
Sorry, if I can just add to what you've just said, is that increasingly, even at the level of Temple Law, which is the law firm here, and at the level of us, management corporate, the management company, clients want to pay for the solution. They don't want to pay for your time. Yes, okay, fine, you use your time, but that's not what they're paying us for. They want to pay you for the solution. And they want a solution that comes quickly, because a lot of them are kind of generation, XYZ, whatever, who are young entrepreneurs with really good startups. They don't want to do things in an antiquated way. They are so integrated with technology themselves, some of these unicorn startups, that if you don't understand the language, you're just not playing. They will just find someone else. So, the whole business model essentially is at risk. It's not the same thing it was 20 years ago. They will pay you, but they'll pay you for the solution. They don't want you to throw the law book at them and explain necessarily why you came to that conclusion. They just want you to fix it. So that's very much... I couldn't
agree more. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I actually was having lunch with a lawyer friend / lawyer that I use occasionally the other day, last week. And I said to him, look, I don't want you to charge me any less. I just don't want you to staple every WhatsApp conversation we've had to the back of the invoice. Like, it doesn't matter how long it took and what it took to get there. I don't need you to prove your workings. I'm paying you for a solution, and you can charge me the same amount. In fact, I want to know that you understand how to use a computer. Like, it's pretty much what how the conversation went. So I think, it goes in line with what you're saying there.
Yeah.
And it's good to hear that Mauritius and people like yourself, professionals like yourself and Temple are leading the way in that. Just to, if I may, just to wrap up and talk a little bit more about you in terms of your future. Obviously, you've just mentioned there you are remarried and you've got your family, and it's great. And although your brother's moved on, but the island's now yours.
Yes.
You mentioned in your notes that you're embarking on your chartered directorship. I mean, what's the future hold for you?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, I think, we're also reading the market. So we have a good understanding of, I think, what the modern day client wants. And I think a lot of that, especially if it's a new jurisdiction for them, coming from, let's say, South Africa, setting up, there's an emotional decision. They're moving their whole company, their family, everything here sometimes, So you have to understand that. And the idea, or what we have to give them, is comfort. So if I'm an entrepreneur, I want to do my passionate things. I want to run my business and, come up with the creative ideas and focus on growing it. I don't want to be bogged down with kind of board decisions, regulatory requirements. And so the idea is where we come in as corporate support service providers is that we give that comfort. We speed along all those things. We take the time to make sure you understand what we're doing, but it's not your stress. It's our stress to make sure that your company is compliant and everything that you're doing is the way it should be done in a new jurisdiction. So for me, the next, natural progression is to focus on that board advisory role. And as a director on some of the boards for our clients here, we do have to fill those shoes. So for that reason, I've decided to look at the chartered directorship, completing that in 2025. So it's done through the Mauritius Institute of Directors here, which I'm a member of. So that's the next step, I think, in my professional journey. But again, I'm taking it with a very practical approach. But with me, it's never just an academic thing. It really has to bring some
it has to
practical
fit
value,
together.
So.
Has to fit together.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, I noticed on the notes you also put something which piqued my interest about you personally becoming a water sommelier. Is that right?
Yes, I've just
or was that a
actually
misprint?
started now. Yeah, so it's a certified water sommelier course, which I'm thoroughly enjoying.
Can you tell me about that? Because I don't think I've ever heard of that before. I know what a sommelier
like you get
is.
a wine sommelier, you get a water sommelier. So it focuses on water as a resource. It's obviously linked to fine dining and hospitality, which, is something that we do here. But I'm really just curious. That's why I'm doing it. And I love water. I mean, I'm not a drinker, so I drink water. So for me, it's exciting to be able to pair good water with my steak instead of a good red wine, So it's really just born out of curiosity. And obviously, it's becoming a scarce resource. So, it's always good to know what we're up against and how to mitigate that. So that's
really interesting. That's really interesting because I'm a non-drinker myself. So I'm also often having a sparkling water with my steak rather than wine. That's why it piqued my interest when I saw it in your notes. I thought, maybe that's something I should look into and get a bit of an understanding of.
I think actually there is one water sommelier in Cape Town. There's one who is doing tastings. He does water tastings and pairings in Franschhoek.
I'm going to look him up. That's what's going to. I'm going to immediately after this recording. I'm going to look him up or him or her up.
There's a tasting room. I think he's got with one of the wine farms. I forget the name. I can get it to you, but it's.
Please don't go out of your way. I'll find it. We've actually got our General Council African General Council Summit coming up in Franschhoek in February, which if you happen to be in South Africa at that time, you must come along to. The second day is in Franschhoek, and I might see if I can combine it with a water tasting with some of the food.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. It would be my first water tasting as well.
Well, it'll be for you and I, even if no one else wants to do it. We'll just do it.
Yeah, we'll do it.
the non-wine drinkers. As long as we don't have to pick them all up after they've had too much. But but look,
That's the rescue run. You end up being
Yeah.
designated Dave.
well, yeah. I mean, once I gave up, I became an immediate designated driver, as I'm sure you did as well. But anyway, look, I'm gonna let you go. But I really thank you for your journey and sharing with it. It's really lovely to meet you. There's so much in there about the way that you've approached life, the way that you've approached tragedy, good times as well, the way that you've put yourself into situations with big firms, small firms, how you've taken that out. Your approach to learning is always from a practical space. I mean, there's so much that people can unpack, and that is obviously the purpose of doing these interviews, is really to give others, other professionals across the whole of the African continent, the opportunity to listen to someone like you, a professional like you, and go, okay, so how do I follow in her path, and how do I get over certain challenges? So from all the listeners, thank you very much for sharing your journey with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. It was lovely to meet you in person, and thank you for having me. I'm very happy and honored to be part of your podcast, so thank you.
Thank you.